Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how I made this super cool Overwatch hat. If you're an Overwatch fan, then you already know this is Mei's friend Snowball. So if you want to learn how to make this for yourself or another Overwatch fan you know, keep watching and I'm going to show you how it's done. Here's the supplies you're going to need. A ruler or measuring tape, but it would help if you have both. Some blue paint, some small flat buttons, a paintbrush, something to write with, pen or pencil works, some scissors, some paper so you can draw out your pattern, blue fleece, light gray or white fleece, black fleece, and thread in the corresponding colors, pins to hold it all together while you're working, and you're gonna need some objects that have a round shape that you can use as a stencil to trace around. Now you can either choose to sew this by hand or use a sewing machine. I'm gonna choose to use a sewing machine, but again, it is completely up to you with whatever you feel more comfortable doing. So let's get started. Using my lovely model, I will show you how I did the measurements. You start at the base of your head and go all the way around your forehead, and this will give you your circumference. I ended up measuring myself and I got 22 inches. Now you want to be sure to add at least 1 to 2 inches for a seam allowance. I added 2, so that'll give me a total of 24 inches. Now we get to the fun part, math! So we're gonna have to make 4 equal pieces for this hat to work. So we take our circumference, which is 24 inches in my case, divide that by 4, and that gives me 6 inches for the base of this pattern. Now, I went halfway into that 6-inch line and made a perpendicular line, and I'm gonna make my hat 7 inches tall. You can do anywhere between 5 and 7 inches tall, depending on how long you want your hat to be. Now you're gonna go from that baseline and go straight up, probably about halfway, then start curving it towards that center line. Once you cut it out, you should have a perfect petal shape that you need to make the hat. Ta-da! Now trace your pattern 4 times onto the blue fabric and cut those pieces out. One tip I have for you for buying fabric is check the remnants section of your craft store. A lot of times, these are the pieces that are too small to be on the bolt, so they'll have it in the remnant section at a discounted price. You don't really need that much fabric for this project, maybe a 1/4 of a yard, so this will be a great place to get really inexpensive fabric. Once you have all your pieces cut out, we're going to start pinning them together. The best way to do this is pin 2 pieces together only on one side. Do the same thing for all the pieces until you get to the last piece. Then you're going to have to pin both sides, one to the beginning piece and one to the last piece. So when you're done pinning it all together, you're going to have this kind of square box shape. But don't worry, once we sew it, it's going to round it all out. Once you're done sewing up your hat, this way and this way, kind of looks like a box. Now you're gonna turn it inside out, and you have a hat! Ta-da! Alright, now let's get on to the rest of the details. So I'm using that pattern that we made at the beginning, and I'm using it as a sizing chart. This way we know how big we need to make Snowball's eyes and the hexagons that go on the side of his head. So now you're going to need to cut out 2 hexagon shapes from the blue fabric as well as 2 hexagon shapes from the black fabric. Don't forget to cut out Snowball's eyes from the black fabric as well. Now pin each of the blue hexagons to each of the black hexagons. And we're only going to sew 5 of the sides. That way we have one side open so we can turn them inside out. Here we have it all sewn up. Now we turn it inside out. One quick tip to help get those corners nice and sharp is use a pen or a pencil, something to get into those corners and really help push them out a lot better. Now we're going to start my favorite part. We're going to paint on Snowball's eyes. You're going to take that blue paint and paint whatever pattern you want the eyes to look like. I know sometimes they have him squinting, sometimes they have him winking, but I just wanted to do it with both eyes open. Now, you're gonna just go in and lightly paint on one coat. Most likely you'll have to do 2 or 3 coats because the fabric is so absorbent. Also, you might want to do this first before you start sewing things because it's gonna take a while for the paint to dry. I should have done that. Yeah. Now we're gonna work on the white part on the top of Snowball's head. Trace the large circle on our light colored fabric and trace a smaller circle in the center of that. When you cut it out, only cut the large circle. We're using the smaller circle in the center as a guide for when we start to sew. Make sure that when you sew this, you go nice and slow. I just fast forwarded here, but sewing in a circle is a lot harder than it looks. So take 4 of your buttons and lay them out on the white circle. You want it to go on the outer edge. I used a pencil and marked a dot where I want each of the buttons to go, and then I went back in and hand sewed each one on. After you have all your buttons sewn on, you want to pin this top part onto the top of the hat. You want to make sure it's nice and centered first before you start pinning it. And then once it's all nice and pinned up, you can start sewing. I suggest you guys really use pins just because you don't want this moving around on you when you're sewing and then it's a lopsided looking snowball. Yeah, that would make Snowball sad. So make sure it's straight. Now we're going to work on the band around the edge of the hat. You can make yours as wide as you want, but remember it will be folded in half. So I made mine 3 inches wide. I also made mine 23 inches long because you don't need as many seams on the band as you do on the hat base. Now you're going to take that long band and you're going to fold it in half long ways. And you're going to sew these 2 ends together. Next, we're going to take that band and fold it in half short ways. Make sure that the seams are hidden inside. We're going to put this all around the edge of your hat and pin it in place. All the edge seams are going to be touching, but don't worry, once we sew this all up together, this is going to be hidden on the inside of the hat. And yes, I know, my sewing machine shakes a lot, and it made the table shake and the camera shake, and I just hope you wouldn't notice it because it was in fast forward. So, look away! Look away! Alright, so we're almost done. Now all we have to do is add the details of the side flaps and his face. Again, I suggest you guys pin this in place before you start working because you don't want something moving around on you and then you end up with a derpy snowball. Unless you want a derpy snowball, then by all means, go for it. But I decided to pin mine in place. So when you're sewing on the side flaps, I suggest you use a zigzag stitch and just sew that across a couple times to make sure it's nice and sturdy. Remember, you only want to sew against one side of the hexagon. That way his ears can flap up and down. It's going to be like a hinge, but out of fabric. And don't forget to sew on both of his ears. Again, you don't want to have a derpy snowball. And now, we get to sew on Snowball's face! Yay! Now, I know I've been using the sewing machine for the majority of this project, but sewing a circle is hard enough. Trying to sew this really weird shape, it was going to be a challenge. So I just decided to go ahead and hand stitch it. I'm just using a running stitch all along the edge here. And finally, we have our completed Snowball hat. Isn't he adorable? He has his little side flaps and his big blue eyes, and he has the nice details on the top. I don't know. I really like how this came out. I think it's super fun. And now you can look super cool while keeping super warm. That was kind of cheesy, wasn't it? Well, thanks you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!